Good afternoon, folks. I am here today to make a little instructional video on how to make aluminum wing struts for a sport cub in specific, and I believe it could be applied to other airplanes as well. And the reason that I originally wanted to stabilize the wings more is to create a more stable camera platform. I see a lot of videos, and my own included, prior to making these, where the wings vibrate so much that it creates a lot of distortion in the picture that the camera is putting out. Also, I tended to get a lot more prop in the picture, more so than I really wanted. Then when I turn the camera rearward, I'm getting a lot of the tail that I really don't necessarily want to see all of the time. There's really 4 advantages that I've come up with for stabilizing your wings better. First of all, you get no prop, no landing gear in the picture. You get the camera away from prop wash, which causes even more distortion. The floats, if you're using floats, have a spray zone that's pretty concentrated right underneath the belly of the plane, and if you have your camera mounted there, it's going to get pretty darn wet unless you have waterproof housing for it. That's not really such a good thing. But primarily, my primary reason is I wanted to stabilize the picture more. So this way, by adding the aluminum struts, I'm able to move my camera out further on the wing, and this really helps minimize the vibration that I get. The stock struts that come with it are pretty flimsy plastic, and they vibrate tremendously in the wind, and they really do nothing to stabilize the wings. There is one fella who has an excellent video out that shows exactly this phenomenon, and if you go, I'll post the website or his video information down at the bottom of the screen here. I'm using today some material I got from Horizon Hobby, and that is this right here, and that is a oblong oval shape, and this particular piece is 1/2 inch wide across, and you could probably go with 3/8, probably would work just fine. This happened to be what I used. The pointed end, the more pointed end will go into the wind, and the fatter end will go away from the wind. A little bit more aerodynamic than just round aluminum. And this comes from K&S Precision Metals makes it, and it is available through Horizon Hobby, and it's about $4 for a 36-inch piece. So let's get to it. First, I would like to show you the difference in the picture with an unstabilized wing and with a stabilized wing. The first video will be some film, has the prop in it, and you see a lot of distortion in the picture, especially with the faster I go. And then the second video is with the wings stabilized, the camera out further, and I personally think just a much clearer picture. So I'll get to that, and then we'll get to building the actual struts themselves.
Alrighty, let's get started here. First of all, let's go over the materials you're going to need. We'll start with a little small, this is 1 inch wide. It's called basswood and came in a longer length, but I've used some of it, as you can see right here already. And it wouldn't be good to go with balsa wood. If anything, if you have a table saw at home, or you can find some Doug fir or something that you can make a little more solid wood, that would be a little better, but this will work fine. And again, you need your aluminum tube from K&S Precision in Chicago, Illinois. Again, available through Hobby or Horizon Hobby. And also you're going to need some different screws. We'll get into those a little bit later. You're going to need some epoxy if you choose, or you can use a glue gun. We'll get to these applications in a little bit, or possibly canopy glue if that works better for you. You're going to need a little distilled white vinegar, and that is going to be used to etch if you decide to paint your struts. The vinegar is a mild acid. This particular bottle has 5% acidity, and that'll help the paint adhere better. And for as far as tools go, if you have a pair of tin snips, straight cut tin snips, that's ideal. But if you don't have those, you can use end cutters, and I didn't bring those out, but I'm not going to use them today. A wire cutter to cut your aluminum, a hacksaw or something with a fine edge blade. If you don't have a hacksaw, you don't need to go buy one. You can just buy the blade and use that as it is. You're going to need a measuring device. You can use a tape measure. I have an architect scale that I'm going to use today. You're going to need a drill motor, whether it's electric or battery operated, and you're going to need a couple of drill bits. Of course, a pencil, and you will need a screwdriver as well. And if I remember anything else along the process, I'll let you know. This is an Ernst Ultra stand, and I picked this up at my local hobby store. And it's really nice. As you can see, it holds the plane up off of the bench and allows me to work on it a little easier. Now these are the struts that I made. I've already unscrewed them. One screw there, one screw there. And this is the original strut. And it's screwed right in to the wing like so. So now what I've done, and this is not an original idea, this is an idea that a friend of mine by the name of Sandy Rock used on his Carbon Z Cub to make some different struts. And Sandy is part owner of Action Hobbies in Meridian, Idaho. Very knowledgeable guy and comes up with some good ideas sometime. Now he didn't use it to stabilize his wings. He actually mounts his GoPro up on the top of his plane. Of course, it's a bigger plane, and he mounts his GoPro right up here, so he's not doing it for the stability. But that's why I am. However, when Sandy does shoot videos, he does get the prop in there still. So anyway, here we have the lead edge is the narrower edge here, and the fatter edge is in the back. And that's basically what we're going to do here, is we're going to make a bridge between these two screws, so that we have a solid point of contact in the middle of the wing, here and here. And we're going to utilize, there are little plastic receivers built into the wing here, and you can see the other side of those when you flip the plane over. There's one there, and there's another one hiding under there. There's one of them, and there's one of them. That's a nice solid anchor that installed during the manufacture. Now, if I have some verbal miscues here, oh, excuse me, here's one right now. One thing I forgot to mention: we are going to need something a sanding device of some sort. You can use, this is a couple of popsicle sticks that I hot glued together and wrapped some 400 grit sandpaper around and hot glued that to it, and that's good for sanding in small areas. For example, I used it right here to sand this little patch job I did. Or what I'm going to use is my electric sander. We'll get to that in a little bit, and I'll show you why. Okay, so first thing is, take your old struts off, save the screws, you're going to need them. And then what we're going to do is make 2 pieces of wood, 1 for each side, and we're going to use the basswood, or if you have Doug fir, softer wood really won't hold the screw very well. So what we've got here, I'm not going to take these off. I have hot glued these on and screwed them, and I don't want to tear them off for demonstration purposes. But what I can tell you is there's a little raised bump underneath here, and we're going to do 2 things here, 3 things. We're going to cut the piece to length, and I have found that a 5-inch piece, which I've already pre-marked here, is going to work really well for what we're doing. These screws on my plane, yours may vary a little bit, but on my plane these screws are 3 15/16 center to center. Okay? So again, I've done a little pre-marking here to help expedite matters. I've got the length, the 5-inch length there. I have marked 1 hole. This is 1 inch wide. So at 1/2 inch I made a horizontal line here. I came in, you can burn it, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you start at 0 or not. 1/2 inch is a 1/2 inch. You can start at 1 inch. If you're using a tape measure, I recommend that. It's a little more accurate. So I've come in a 1/2 inch there. And now I am going to go 3 15/16 to the center of the other hole. So those are the 2 holes that I want to drill. So, next step. Find a drill bit that is going to accommodate the screws that you are going to be using. Okay, now what I'd like to do is keep my screws, and this is a glass ramekin. You can buy them at a dollar store, get 4 of them for $1, and they come in real handy. Now this particular screw holes for these holes here, you do not want to make too big. It's a soft wood. The screw will go through just fine. So I'm going to go with a 1/16 inch bit here. I'm going to put that screw back in my container. And those are actually the strut screws that I'm going to use at these points here a little bit later. Get those out of the way so I don't knock them over. Get my drill. Okay, so let's drill the first hole. And you want to drill the small hole first. And I like to drill my holes first before I cut the piece, in case I make a mistake. And get rid of that. Put that back so I can find it later. And now, for the second hole, I'm going to go with a 7/32. I think that's what I used because the plastic nub that sticks up out of the wing to receive the original screws, you need to hog out the bottom of your piece. What I do with it? Oh, there it is. Sorry, this is my first time making a how-to video, so you'll have to forgive some discrepancies or little mistakes. Now, you don't want to go all the way through this piece of wood, and so I am going to reverse the drill and run it backwards so that it doesn't bite all the way through and ruin the hole. Center it on that. And then I just want to go real gently and score out the back a little bit. Just short little bursts. I'll go a little bit more than that. Okay, that's pretty good. Not a real big bump. Now what you'll do is when you get your wing struts off, highly recommend doing is, we'll go with that for right now, and that'll make it so your piece of wood sits flat down and isn't sticking up on the bumps that are underneath here. Again, I don't want to take this and rip this all apart, but once you get those exposed, just take your drill bit, lay it up against that little plastic nub, and make sure you've got the right size drill bit that'll work. You might have to go with a little bit bigger. You may need to go with a 1/4 inch bit. just play that one by ear. So now you're going to take your fine-tooth saw, and you can see where I've used the side of my cutting board here before, and you just want to make a back cut first and just get that going. I have to lose my pencil. Okay, now you've got your piece cut to length, you've got your screw hole in there, and then you've got your recessed hole right there so you can sit down flush like that. Now if you look real close, I have beveled the front edge of this. I don't see any reason to have a square edge right there, and it's very easy to take care of that. You want to make sure that that's upside, you want the recesses down, and if you forget, just make a little pencil tick there, that's the top. A couple ways you can sand that down. Take a sanding block, sand it this way, or what I chose to do was use my electric sander, and I'll get that out now. Okay, now obviously your piece of wood that you get is going to need to be at least 10 inches long to make both pieces. Doesn't hurt to get a little more in case you make a mistake. Now since I paused there, I know that's my lead edge, and so I'm just going to take this come down a little bit more. A little bit more. All right. Set that down for a little bit. And now what I'll do, just to fine that up a little bit, take my little homemade sanding block here and alright, now I've got a nice piece. That's one. And I'm only going to make one for the demonstration purposes. At this point, I like to paint this. In this case, I painted it white to match the wing. And that's going to fit right down over those nubs that are the plastic nubs. And I'll be able to screw right down into those. So make two pieces just like that. Alright. Now, that's the first step. While your paint's drying for these, you can go ahead and you want to get those painted, or you can go ahead and screw them down, complete the process with the aluminum struts, and then screw them and glue them later. I painted mine, let them dry, let them set up, and then I took my hot glue gun. Of course, I obviously plugged it in. Got a nice outline of, I believe I traced the pattern of this onto my wing with a pencil. Got glue down onto the wing. Pressed the piece, the wood piece on it, making sure that the beveled edge is forward, and pressed it down real good and let that dry. Then I screwed it in. Now, you might not think you need the screws, and possibly you don't, but I have found that when hot glue gets wet or the foam gets wet, I used to have a little camera mount right here, and the spray from my floats had made it really loose and it's come off. It came off really easy when I peeled it. So, idea here is stability, screw it and glue it. Okay, so the next step, getting your wing strut made. First of all, we need to cut it to length, and we're going to make it a little bit long, and this length is good enough for two pieces. And I got the lead edge out this way, and in this case what I did the first time, got this one to work with now, but you don't want to just go from the end where the bend is. Obviously we need to incorporate the bend in there. This piece is 35.5 inches long. I'm going to put that there, leave myself a little bit long here, take my tin snips and simply cut the metal. Alright. And that flattened that out a little bit on the end, but that's okay. I was going to do that anyway. So now It looks like I have forgotten an item out here, another tool that you will need. So I'll be right back. Okay. I forgot to mention earlier, I told you I'd make a few mistakes here. You can use a file to file down that edge. You know, use what you've got. There's no reason to spend a whole bunch of money unnecessarily. This is a pair of end cutters that I have that works on the aluminum as well. I'll make the next cut with this one with those to show you. And then to crimp your ends, you can either use a pair of dikes or needle nose pliers. I like these ones because the grooves out here and the grooves right here will tend to mark the aluminum, whereas I have a smooth area right in here that I can do the same thing. So let's go ahead and crimp this end. And I'm going to crimp it in about a 1/2 inch, 5/8, right in that neighborhood. And as you can see, that's marking it anyway, but that's not really a big deal. It's just a cosmetic thing. And the way I got the size of my crimp, the length of my crimp, looks like I need to go a little bit further. So I'll use the other ones for that. Come in from the end this way. Clamp down. Squish it real good. And that should be, let's check it. Nope, make it a little longer still. It's best to cheat inward, because if you make a mistake the other way, you can't go back. Okay, now I'm going to give it a little bend. Alright, now I've already wasn't paying attention, and I made a slight error there, which I can still use this piece. I did not have the lead edge out. As you can see, I got the fat edge down there. So I can use that on the other side, and that'll work perfectly. So, okay, I got that one made. Oh, let's go ahead and go over to the left wing and make it for the left wing. Now, where is that guy? Here it is. Underneath my drill, which I don't need right there anymore. Okay. We got our bend. Now I'm just going to match this bend that I have here. And that lines up pretty darn good. What I did originally was just match the bend in the bottom portion of my original strut. Okay, and this is flexible, so I can bend that a little bit more to match that a little bit better, and that looks pretty darn good right there. Okay, so that's the bottom end right there. And you can always bend it back just a little bit. You don't want to fatigue the metal though, so you don't want to do that a whole lot. So now what I'm going to do, make an experiment cut with my end cutters. And that works just fine. I actually use my tin snips. You're more likely to have a pair of these than you are a pair of tin snips. And you can also use the dikes. Now these have been used quite a bit, and they've got some chingaderas in the blade there, so I'm not going to use those to cut anything. I'm going to go ahead and go with my tin snips because I know those work real well. And I'm going to cut a little bit off of this. And again, don't cut too much. Don't be too aggressive too quickly. So, get these back. And I know I want that there. I know where my hole is there. And I'll talk about how to get that hole in just a second. Now this one wants to crimp down this direction. And again, you can adjust that. It's very malleable metal. And it looks like I went a little too far there, so I'll just bend it back a little bit. And that's getting me in the ballpark. Now you want this bend to be outside of this to make sure it clears it. Now let's go to this hole that I have here. I did this strictly by eyesight, and it turns out when I measured it later, when I measure up from the center of this screw to the center of that hole, I have 2 7/16 of an inch on this side, and I have 2 7/16 on this side. Okay, and that's coming straight up this way. I just eyeballed it before and it turns out it worked out just fine. Okay, so now that we have our piece of metal made, we got to do a little trimming here. Now this is where if you were to purchase 3/8, you can see where that's just a little too wide to fit in there. So what I did was I modified it down. And let me measure that right now and see what it is. It looks like 3/8 would work just fine there. So if you got yourself a piece of 3/8 metal, it comes in quarter, 9/16, or excuse me, quarter inch, 5/16, 3/8, and ½ inch, 3/4. But anyway, so I had to nip it down a little bit to fit inside of there, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to do that now.